everyone, and welcome to the video. I'm Professor Amanda, and class has officially begun. So we're doing a study abroad program again today, but it's going to be a little bit different. We're going to be doing a lot of traveling. So this was a speed tournament that was brought to you by PvP Tussle India, and this was actually pre-Nightfall Cup. So this was something that they put out a few days before so people could test their teams and see how they fare against other players. So I didn't really have a team composition yet, but Abby, our dean, gave me a team to try to use with a pretty low threat score of around, I think 527 or 532 or something, which is pretty good. So the team that we decided to run with was Galarian Stunfisk, Lapras, Gligar, Shadow Gallade, Scrafty, and Venusaur. So if you look at the team, it's actually it's a pretty safe but a little bit spicy team. We realized going in, almost even near the beginning when we were looking at the possible meta mons for the month, that Shadow Gallade was going to be an absolute beast. So we knew that overall would probably be a pretty good safe swap. The only thing that really can take it out is a Charm user, but even things that are supposed to threaten the Gallade, it does rather well against, especially since Confusion is so slow. If it can swap in and get a little bit of an energy advantage, it obviously puts it in a good place. Scrafty is an interesting fighter. He loses to the other fighters, but it does well against the Gallades, and it actually can do a little bit of a fight against the Frostlasses and the Noctowls. So it's a really interesting pick in that regard. It's also very weak to Charm, so now I have two on the team that are ridiculously weak to the Charm users. So we have to kind of balance that out, and that is good to use the Galarian Stunfisk. I think Galarian Stunfisk, like in the Sunrise Cup, is kind of the MVP of the Nightfall. It's on everyone's team pretty much, unless you are trying to kind of put yourself at a handicap. And also Venusaur. Venusaur is actually a pretty nice safe swap because it can be even a Frostlass if it has a little bit of an energy advantage. So that's always the goal when you're making a team, is how do they play well with each other, and what things can different Pokemon cover that are your glaring weaknesses. So if I know that I really want to play my Shadow Gallade, I need to think of things that are on the team that will complement it. And so if someone brings in a Wigglytuff or a Ninetales, that I don't also bring in my Scrafty and also something else that the Wigglytuff is just going to charm down, and then I've gone through all three of mine and I'm still facing their lead. So the tournament was actually 5 rounds, but I'm only going to showcase a couple rounds, and then also we have a little special treat. We're going to talk with the winner of the tournament as well. So for one of the rounds that I'd like to showcase, I thought this team was really interesting because it had double Shadow Razor Leafers. Well, what is this? GBL? So they have a Shadow Gloom and a Shadow Victory Bell, which if you watched our meta simplified guides, you will know that they can pretty much tear through. If double shielded, the Razor Leafers can really tear through almost an entire team. They can even take out the Gligars and the Gliscors, which shouldn't be able to happen, but okay, it is what it is. It also can take out a Medicham. It can one shield and take out Frostlasses, so it can take out Stunfisks. Razor Leafers are extremely strong. You need flyers against them, so I knew for a fact that I would have to, even though they could potentially farm down Gligar, I'm probably going to have to bring that in. They are weak to the Shadow Gallade, but they also hit hard in return, so I know that if I bring a Gallade into it, they're just going to pretty much farm each other down, but they are weak to the Venusaurs. The Venusaur can take them out. So, but on the flip side, on their team, they have Frostlass and Noctowl, which are very good Venusaur counters. So let's see how we decided to play out this match. So to start with, I led the Gligar, thinking if they led a Razor Leafer, I could at least take away some shields from them ahead of time. But they had a different thought, and they brought in their Noctowl. So this was the very first tournament of the month, so I didn't really block just to see what the moveset was that they were carrying, and also because I knew that if it was a Sky attack, then it wouldn't take out the Gligar to begin with. Even though the Gligar does lose to a Noctowl, it can do a lot of chip damage, and also it's not a terrible loss for the Gligar. So they end up switching out to a Galarian Stunfisk, which is not a good matchup for the Gligar. Even though I am running Dig, I didn't think I would get to it in time. So I did a swap, and luckily I did it right at the right moment, and I caught the Rock Slide on my own Galarian Stunfisk, so all of their energy was pretty much wasted. I'm able to get to an Earthquake, and I'm going to throw it, and now it's up to them if they want to. They don't shield, and I decide I'm going to shield because even if it's just a Rock Slide, my Stunfisk has such an energy advantage, and I'm able to fast move farm down for even more. So they bring in Medicham, which is the best answer to the Galarian Stunfisk, but like I said, I've already stored up a lot of energy, so I go ahead and Earthquake it, and then when my switch timer's up, I move back to the Gligar, and I'm going to Sky Aerial Ace it. They block. I'm assuming this is going to be an Ice Punch, but I think that the Gligar has done its job, so I will now bring in the Gallade. It still has a shield, so I'm going to use it against this Noctowl. And then I think at this point, I should be able to take out the Noctowl with a Leaf Blade. It's not effective, but it's a Shadow Gallade, so it does a little bit more damage. And then we have that Medicham in the back, but I'm able to Confusion it down. So I am still wary of the double Razor Leafer team, but I noticed something this second round that I didn't notice the first, and that is that they don't have a Charm user. So if there's not a Charm user on that team, there's really no excuse for me not to use both the Scrafty and the Shadow Gallade. However, I do recognize that that Noctowl is a pretty decent answer to it, but I think I'm going to risk it this next round and see how we play it out. So yeah, so they lead a Galarian Stunfisk and I lead the Scrafty, and I'm feeling great about this. So yeah, they bring in the Medicham, which is a good counter to the Scrafty, but I immediately switch out to the Gligar, and I block the Ice Punch, and I'm going to get up to an Aerial Ace and throw it back, which is also super effective against the Medicham. So I'm leaving it in their court if they want to shield as well. They do shield. They're going to get to another Ice Punch, and I'm just going to let it go through because I don't think it'll knock me out at this range. I'm very lucky that even though it's super effective, it doesn't, and I'm able to make it to another Aerial Ace. So they double shield their Medicham, which is smart because they do know that it has a good play against the Scrafty, and they don't know what else is in the back. I mean, the Galarian Stunfisk and a Lapras also doesn't do well against the Medicham. Unfortunately for them, it's that Shadow Gallade. They bring in their Noctowl, and I immediately switch back to the Scrafty, and I'm throwing Foul Plays because it's in my head I thought that it was part Psychic, but then I realized, oh no, it's just a normal and flying, and it has a Psychic move that it can use. So that was dumb on my part. But so they bring in their Stunfisk, knowing that their Noctowl has a better matchup against my Gallade, but I'm not going to block, and I'm just going to Power Up Punch and ramp up my strength on this Scrafty. So yeah, look how fast that Stunfisk is going down. It has to throw. It can't try to farm me down. And like I said, it's already done its purpose. So I'm going to go ahead and farm down the Stunfisk so I can close combat the Noctowl when it comes back in. Because since it is normal, not Psychic, the fighting move will do super effective damage to it. So I hit the close combat and take out the Noctowl. So that was one of my matches during the Tussle Cup. Here is another matchup I had with a different team composition. This one was actually in the final round, so this person and we had both gone 3-1 at this point. I was hoping to go I was hoping to go for a sweep, but I didn't get there. So this was the team that I played. First off, I noticed that they have a Alolan Ninetales, a Charm user, so it renders a decent amount of my team useless. A Venusaur, which is always a great swap. Venusaurs are just so strong, and the thing that would counter the Venusaur the best is off the bench. We have a Galarian Stunfisk on everyone's team, a Blaziken, which is an interesting pick, but can beat the Venusaur, can beat the Lapras, can beat the Stunfisk. It's a bait-dependent matchups going on. Whiscash, which beats the Stunfisk, but really that's about it on the team. I feel like as far as team composition and Mud Boys go, Whiscash usually is not as good as Swampert is, but it's an interesting pick, and it definitely hits the Galarian Stunfisk harder and faster. So with all the Galarian Stunfisk in the meta, it's maybe not a bad choice. And lastly is Shadow Abomasnow, which is also always gives people trouble. Shadow Abomasnow can beat the Galarian Stunfisk in a 2-shield scenario, and obviously just with the extra shadow damage that the Powder Snows and the Ice moves, you're just asking for trouble if you have a flyer. So let's see how we decided to play out this match. So I'm leading a Lapras into a Venusaur, which, okay, again, not great, not bad, but we obviously have to see how they are going to play it out. So they throw a Frenzy Plant. So I'm going to go ahead and block it, and I'm going to charge up to a Double Surf. Catacombs Cup. So, yep, so they block the Surf, but I immediately have another Surf stored up. So I throw that, and they block, so they double block their Venusaur, and they are going to throw a Frenzy Plant, and I'm just going to let the Lapras go. Thanks, Lapras. You did your job. And then I'm bringing in the Gallade. Because a Venusaur makes a pretty decent safe swap, so I'm bringing in the Gallade to see if they have anything that could. Indeed, they have a Charm User, so I'm moving back. This is rough for me. So luckily I have a couple Vine Whip advantage because otherwise this was even worse. And I'm also an idiot because what I should have done was I should have stored up, let them throw first, and throw a Sludge Bomb at them, because that would have knocked out the Abomasnow in one move. But yeah, my adrenaline was too high. I wasn't really thinking, and this was way closer than it had to have been. So I'm able to get to another Frenzy Plant, which almost knocks out the Charm User, and luckily for me, my Gallade still had enough health that even though Charm really chunks away, it wasn't enough to take it out before my confusion went through. So I definitely misplayed in that first round. It could have been a heavier win for me if I would have used the Sludge Bomb on the Abomasnow, but I'm thinking about this now in my next round, and I'm going to try to adjust my play a little bit. So the next round, I'm leading Venusaur, and I lead it into a Galarian Stunfisk. This is a comparable matchup, so it really depends on both people's play style. You can try to go straight for the Earthquake if you're the Stunfisk, which will essentially almost one-shot a Venusaur, but 2 Rock Throws will also take it out, so it's really a debate. I think when they're both being led that the Stunfisk usually has the advantage. But they did go for the Earthquake. I blocked it up, luckily, and so now I'm not going to block even if it's an Earthquake again, which it is. As you can see, it brings me down really low, but I charged up a lot of energy, so I'm able to throw another Frenzy Plant and take out their Stunfisk, which is good for me because now I can see what is coming in next. Which, if I would have lost that matchup and brought out the Gallade, we would have been in a world of hurt because they could have brought in their Ninetales and matched things up. So sometimes it's really important to win the lead. So as you can see, man, that Charm is just chunking down damage. They do a switch into their Whiscash, and I stored the energy on my Lapras and switched out to my Shadow Gallade. And I know that the Gallade is pretty useless at this point, so I'm not blocking. And I'm going to throw this Leaf Blade, which will knock out the Whiscash. That's kind of a bummer because I'm letting them charm me down and get some extra energy. They're going to throw this Psyshock, which I have to block. And now my goal is to charge up to a Double Surf and throw because they still have a shield left. And I need to make sure that this goes down before I get charmed down. So I didn't quite make it up to a Double Surf, but I'm pretty comfortable knowing that I would. So yeah, just one more fast move. I'm able to hit this Surf, and it's enough to take out the Alolan Ninetales. So those were very close games and really well played by my opponent. So now we're going to do something a little bit different. We're going to actually be joined by the winner of the speedrun tournament, and that is a French trainer, Seibpa. Seibpa, how are you doing?
Good, how are you doing?
I'm doing well. It's kind of funny because we face each other in a lot of tournaments, and yes, it's either one of us. I'm always nervous when I have to play you.
Yeah, you definitely got the best of me in the Sunrise Cup. I think our matches were pretty close in the regionals when we played back in April, but I couldn't do anything against you in the Sunrise Cup, so I was still looking for my revenge.
Yeah, you definitely got it here. But why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
So, yeah, I'm Seibpa. I'm actually an American in Lille, France. And I help run Leo PvP Arena, which is our Silph group for PvP, as well as our Discord. It was pretty laid back at the beginning, but then once quarantine hit, we turned toward remote raids since that was our only option. And now we've grown quite a bit, and we run a mega cup tournament for each themed of the Silph Cups every month, and that's always on the 4th. That's kind of become our thing, 4th of the month.
Yeah, it's really grown. It's like one of the largest in Europe.
Yeah, it's quite surprising. We weren't expecting that, but we're riding that wave, and we're really happy with how things are going. And yeah, it just keeps getting bigger and bigger. The competition keeps getting more and more challenging.
For real.
It's great because it's early in the month. We have 24-hour rounds, so you get in 7 quality matches at the beginning of the month. You can test out your team. You can figure out what works, what doesn't work. If you need to make changes, and then you're ready to go for the rest of the month. Like it's kind of a springboard, a trampoline for the rest of the month.
Yeah, indeed. So, all right. So yeah, we were both in the speed tournament brought on by PvP Tussle India. Tell me about your 6 that you brought to this tournament.
Yeah, so I guess I could start with the more obvious choices. You'll notice if you look at my team, it's very, very, I guess, bland. It's not spicy at all. So I played pretty conservative, except maybe for that Shadow Gallade. And yeah, we'll definitely get to there. So I think we could start with the most obvious, which would be Stunfisk. It's one of those Pokemon that, unless you feel like you want to give yourself an unnecessary disadvantage, you bring it along.
Yeah. At least it has to be on your team to threaten exactly. the possibility that you're playing it.
Yeah, it would have been interesting actually if it had been banned instead of being allowed, because it's omnipresent, it's everywhere. So I was wondering how that would have changed the meta if it had not been allowed. So you got your Stunfisk. Then another pretty common choice, Frostlass.
Mm-hmm. Number 1 on PV Poke.
Yes, and I find it to be a great generalist. If you can get some energy on it, you can pretty much unleash it on anything, put some shield pressure. But in turn, it is quite frail, so it needs shield itself.
Yeah.
I also like the fact that since counter users were pretty important for this tournament to counter Stunfisk, I liked the fact that it could resist that counter damage, and played well against all the fighters except for Scrafty, which we see here. So yeah, there's Frostlass. Then Venusaur, another pretty common pick in most of the Silph Cups. Again, a bit of a generalist, but it's because Frenzy Plant is so strong and you can get to
it's OP.
Yeah, and I thought as strong as Victory Belt is, there is a certain stigma attached to it sometimes, and Venusaur fills that same role. Yeah. And I also like the fact that it does put shield pressure on teams as well. The fact that I also have 2 other tappers, you guys like to call that, with Gallade and Ninetales. I thought that might be a bit overkill and not
the most hated team in the cup.
Exactly. So that's why I went with Venusaur as well. So again, popular choice. It's very popular, but I also feel like it's a bit underrated. It's something that we sometimes take for granted, but it's always a solid choice. I definitely overlooked Venusaur at the start of Catacomb Cup, for example.
Me too. Also, even in Sunrise Cup, if I had to do that over again, I noticed that a lot of people would, every time Venusaur is an option, you should at least look into it, even if it's not ranked very high, because it always does well.
Absolutely. Either, plan, or on the other hand, you need to plan for it as well.
Yes, yeah.
And so at this point, you've got Stunfisk and Frostlass, and I feel like they balance Venusaur's weaknesses, which are confusion and fires as well. So up until now, I feel like we have a pretty good synergy with those 3. And again, like Frostlass, Venusaur can flip a lot of matchups, or at least throw a good amount of damage against most of the meta with a couple of extra Vine Whips in. Then we could look at Ninetales. So Ninetales. When I was putting my team together, actually after listening to your meta podcast, your meta Nightfall podcast, this was, I think 2 days before I did this cup. 2 things really jumped out to me, and that was Count Xevious really emphasizing the importance of Gallade. And I think definitely something not to be overlooked for this cup. It's just such a problem, so dangerous. And also the fact that Matthew Brewer, who is one of the guest speakers there, he made a point that Swamperts and Medicham more or less serve the same purpose, and maybe we're a bit redundant together. So decided to go for Medicham. We'll talk about that in a bit. Another thing, and one other thing I have in mind as well is Raging Taz. He had a bit of a dialogue towards the end of that podcast, but honestly, I encourage your viewers to go back and check that out, because I think he made a really strong point about keeping your team flexible and not for too many specialists. And so you'll see that my team is quite balanced. And I feel like with this meta, it's a bit like Sunrise, where I feel like I always have a chance in every match, and that I have a lot of flexibility with my team as well. I know I'm kind of going off on another.
No, I like
instead of talking about the team comp
behind team building. I think that's something that people take for granted a lot, because they say, "Oh, this one is ranked really high, and this one's ranked really high," and so they want to put all of the best or the most threatening ones on their team, but they don't actually necessarily have good composition together, or they're not thinking, okay, if I use these, then I'm really weak to this. And so then sometimes you can have a team that will just completely wipe out yours because you have no way to stop it once it gets rolling.
Yeah, you really can't overemphasize the importance of team composition and not just picking the top 6 off of PV Poke.
Right.
Something that was really interesting at the beginning of Marsh Cup, we saw that Swampert, I think, was ranked 40th or 45th, something quite low. And I was talking with Asinoid, who I run Leo PvP Arena with, and we both quickly picked up on the importance of Swampert and how it had so many critical matchups against most of the rest of the meta. And in the end,
especially when Marowak started becoming really popular.
Exactly. And so we realized how important it was to have that as part of your team, even if it was so low. So other really good advice is just not to look farther down the list and to see what fits your team best, as opposed to just going off of the glitz and glamour of the top meta. So going back to Ninetales, once I realized the importance of Gallade, you'll also notice that it's really hard to counter Gallade. It is a problem.
Yes.
And you really need to find a way to deal with it. And for me at least, I found the best way to deal with it was a Charmer.
Yep. After this cup, I also realized if you don't have a Charmer on your team, then you're just begging for them to use a Gallade.
Absolutely. Yeah, I've come across maybe 2 or 3 teams without Charmers, and you can kind of breathe a bit more easily, because it definitely gives you that flexibility, especially to use Gallade as a safe switch, since you don't have to worry about being so hard countered and locked in with the Charmer.
Yeah.
So anyways, the choice then became which Charmer. That became the question, is which Charmer between Wigglytuff and Ninetales. And I'm a big fan of Wigglytuff. I use it quite often, but I've also really wanted to use Ninetales.
Yeah.
And I felt like finally it had its time to shine in this tournament, because I really like the fact that there is a lot of ice. There's a big ice presence because Frostlass is so popular. And then, as we see on your team as well, you've got Lapras, so it can resist at least the quick attack damage.
And Ninetales beats Wigglytuff as well.
Exactly. I think sometimes it might be IV dependent. If you have a really good Wigglytuff, I think it might
That's
be
true. It can survive it, yeah.
But what I really like about A9 over Wigglytuff is it has access to a quicker charge move, and I found that to be very helpful to put, as strange as it sounds, shield pressure with the Charmer.
Yep.
So it's got that Psyshock, and Psyshock in this meta is a really good attack, because you do have Pokemon. You have a lot of poison Pokemon, such as Venusaur, and you also have Golbats, which my team is not. Yeah, I mean, granted, you don't necessarily want to bring Ninetales into a Golbat matchup, but if you do find yourself in that position, you can fight back a bit more easily, as opposed to Wigglytuff.
Who just has to sit there and take it.
Exactly. And the fact that at least this point, I was also wondering, I know Matthew Brewer also talked about Pyroar on your broadcast, but we see very little fire presence.
I mean, technically it could change mid-month now. I mean, a lot of the tournaments that have been going on had already started before the release, so it's interesting to see what the mid-month meta shift always turns out to be. Last month it was Shiftry.
Yeah. Oh yeah, gosh. Yeah, let's
But
not.
when you look at my team, what was your thoughts of what you plan to do against it?
Yeah. So looking at your team, I was very intrigued by Gligar. So that's the first and only time I've encountered a Gligar. But also you've got a bit of mystery around Gligar and involving its charge attack, because I think it has 3 viable charge attacks with Dig and Aerial Ace and Night Slash.
Right.
Just kind of depends on how it fits your team and where you need to fill the holes in on your weaknesses. So I knew that Gligar was probably going to be a problem. And then also Gallade. Even though I've got a Gallade counter, it's still no matter what your team is, you really do need to worry about Gligar or Gallade.
Plus, I mean, if you do have, if you use the Ninetales as your with the G-Fisk on the other team too, if you get a Ninetales locked against the G-Fisk, it really sucks as the Ninetales, because the other one can just completely store up a ton of energy on you.
Absolutely. And then with Scrafty, I actually encountered a lot of Scrafties just in this tournament in particular, and I was concerned because Scrafty in principle is a Gallade counter, since it resists that confusion damage, and it does win in theory. But actually playing through that, I felt that it wasn't as big of a Gallade counter as I thought it was going to be. You can still do quite a bit of damage with those.
Yeah, Shadow Gallade is it's too strong.
That's the thing. And then I was intrigued by Lapras as well. Always a really solid pick, kind of like Venusaur. It's always a very safe pick, but also really, really solid pick as well. So coming up with a team to combat yours, I was going to try out Stunfisk because I felt like Stunfisk really served me well in this tournament. So I did end up using it quite a bit, not just for bench pressure, but I did use it quite a bit. And honestly, coming into this tournament, one of the main reasons why I did this tournament was to test out Gallade. And my goal was actually before starting this tournament, I said to myself, I'm going to use Gallade as the safe switch for every battle.
Ooh, okay.
Just to test that out, because that was something I really wanted to work on as a strategy. Mm-hmm. I ended up doing that once, I think, the entire tournament. And I honestly barely used Gallade, and I ended up using Medicham more than any other Pokemon.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Yeah, which I was quite surprised and was not necessarily expecting, but that's how it ended up working. And
yeah, I mean, but sometimes it's like you pick the Pokemon that are best to your play style. Yep. And Medicham is something that it's been around since season 1. Tournament 1, so you kind of are familiar with how many counts and how much it can take. Like I completely support that.
Yep. And as Medicham, also on your podcast, it was discussed just its function as a Swiss Army knife of sorts, and that you figure out how it best suits your team. And there was even discussion about running Cycle Cuts as the charge.
Yeah, I know some people who are trying it, so it'll be interesting. Well, let's jump into the first battle, and we just have my screen, so you're gonna see it from my perspective. So game 1, I lead the Gligar into a Venusaur, which to me, I feel like this is a decent matchup, but you're staying in it.
Yep. Because again, I didn't have particularly strong Gligar counters, and I felt like I could at least do a decent amount of damage, and thought it was going to be a wash, but then I got hit with an Aerial Ace. So then your moveset was revealed, and then I realized maybe that wasn't the best idea. But
when you saw the Aerial Ace, did you think that I also have Night Slash? Because I'm running Aerial Ace and Dig, which
I honestly still didn't know. I really still didn't know. I felt like either option was still really viable for you. You're going to get completely walled with Aerial Ace and Night Slash on Stunfisk, for example. But then with that double ice weakness, it would fight back against Stunfisk as well. Mm-hmm. So we exchanged Gallades here, and I was able to get a bit of shield pressure.
Yeah, and when that Medicham came in, I was so bummed because when my Gligar went down, I had a Gallade and I had a Stunfisk left, and I was like, okay, if it's a Frostlass that's in the back, then the Stunfisk will do better without shields.
So then other interesting point is I'm running Power Punch.
Yeah, and which
My-
okay, there's no chance
all
now.
Definitely not what's recommended. I think it's Ice Punch and Psychic, but I wanted to have Medicham be a very strong, have a really strong counter presence on my team. I felt that it was going to work really well with that.
But it makes sense because like Avi was saying too, Kanzivius, that he wants his fighter to have a fighter moveset. So if you're running Ice Punch and you're running Psychic, then really the only damage that you're getting done is from the counter damage, which counter damage is super strong. I mean, it's one of the best fast moves in the game, but if that's the only thing you have, it might not cut it in the end.
Yeah, and the other question then was whether to run Ice Punch or Psychic. I actually ran Ice Punch in this tournament because I was expecting to have I was expecting to see a stronger flyer presence on teams. Ended up not being the case, and so I decided to revisit that to really decide whether Ice Punch was the best choice. I was pretty happy with how Power Up Punch performed with Medicham, but not so much with Ice Punch.
Interesting. So I have to ask then, and maybe you don't want to reveal it because you're still in tournaments, but has your moveset on your Medicham changed for other tournaments?
Yes.
Okay, all right.
And other thing you'll notice is I'm actually running 2 Psychic Fighters with Gallade and Medicham, so it might look a bit redundant in terms of typing, but they serve very different purposes.
Yes, yeah, I agree. I'm in my other tournaments, I'm also running Gallade and Medicham, and I've done the same thing. Okay, so this is game 2. I had to adapt a little bit to your play. I was a little salty that I called it wrong on the end, so this time I led a Stunfisk and you led the Ninetales, which is a great lead for me.
Yeah, so put myself in a bit of a disadvantage here, but I wanted to keep testing Ninetales because actually up until this point I was using Ninetales quite a bit. What I liked about it is that you also have access to Ice Beam, and it does do a good chunk against Stunfisk if it goes unshielded, and that happens quite a bit. That is
true. Yeah, but if you can get up to an Ice Beam,
that's the thing. It's going to need a bit of protection of shields.
So even though it's not always the best matchup of a Stunfisk versus the Gallade, I had to switch it in because once I saw the Ninetales, I realized that my Gallade would be completely useless. So I just I blocked once to at least threaten and get the Stunfisk down, and then I brought in the Venusaur.
Get some farm. So this point I decided to just chip away here. See if I'm down. I think my switch timer wasn't up yet. And here comes the stun.
Yeah. So once I saw that that Gallade was coming in, I swapped as soon as possible. Yeah. But you didn't fall for I mean, I clearly had enough energy, but you decided not to shield.
Yep. Just a lucky call here, because if that had been an earthquake, then I would have had no play at all with Ninetales.
Yeah. I should have just gone for it. I made this a lot closer than I think it had to be, but it's such a mind game when it comes to, are they baiting? Are they doing and you are not baiting. You close combated me, you dipped.
No, a lot of people say that this is a rock, paper, scissors meta, but I think when you give yourself a flexible team, it doesn't necessarily have to be.
It's true. I haven't found it as much as like a Forest Cup was a horrible rock, paper, scissors thing for me. So now I'm getting really nervous, but I knew I had to save a shield for the Venusaur because you had stored up so much energy that the Psyshock would one-shot me.
Exactly.
Boom! Frenzy planted.
Exactly. Yep. Pretty easy there, and you have plenty of energy for even almost the second one as well.
So what are your thoughts going into the last round?
So again, I still felt like that Gallade had a lot of play, but I wanted to try it as a lead this time.
And I was thinking, he's going to use Gallade as a safe swap. Everyone uses Gallade as a safe swap. And Stunfisk is just so powerful. So that was my thought of, I'm going to continue to lead Stunfisk.
It was a good lead for you.
So I'm seeing this, and I'm not. It's the very beginning, of the month as well, and I'm not really familiar with how many counts it takes. And so I see that you get to this, and I was like, he is baiting me. We have 2 shields. There's no way.
Decided to go for it.
Oh, I am one-shotted. So that sucked.
It was kind of a double whammy for you because you had enough energy for an earthquake.
I know. I should have blocked.
So then I also brought Frostlass this time.
Yep.
Because I thought it could do fairly well against Gallade with a little bit of energy.
Which is, you have to shield or else you'll get one-shotted as the Gallade.
I kept going for these home run hits here, and I probably should have gone for an Avalanche there instead of a Shadow Ball because you still had those 2 shields.
Yeah, at this point I was like, it has to survive. Okay, so I'm pretty sure at this point that I'm able to take the Frostlass out, but I know that you have a shield and you still have that your own Shadow Gallade left.
But then you've got a Gallade with energy, which is always dangerous.
That's true, yeah. Were you feeling you had this in the bag at this point, or were you still kind of on your toes?
Since I'm playing you, I can never think that I've got it in the bag.
That's reassuring at the least. I feel the same way whenever I'm playing you.
So Gligar comes back out. So
yeah, I was over farming a little bit here, but yeah. It's enough to take out the Gallade. And then I'm thinking, maybe I have it if I can get to another Aerial Ace. But
this is actually when Ice Punch came in very handy.
Yeah.
As we see.
Which is enough to take me out. And then I'm not. Oh, I am able to get it.
Yeah, it was still a very close third match. No surprises there.
Oh, that hurts. This replay just hurts.
Yeah.
So wow. Not 1 HP. I mean, you still had enough for at least another punch or 2 in on me, but that was still a pretty close game.
Absolutely.
So yeah, thank you for doing this. If you had any advice or tips for people who are still playing their Nightfall Cups, what would you tell people?
Prepare for Gallade.
Yeah, yes, that's seems to be the #1 message of my PvP academia.
And I think the best way to do that is to bring a Charmer. I know that it does limit eliminate some of the flexibility that you've got making a team, but it needs to be done because it is such a threat. At least you can discourage slightly someone from bringing a Gallade so freely. And then just build a very balanced team. Don't go for specialists, I think, because you can always give yourself a chance for victory if you do have a balanced team, especially with this meta.
Yeah, well, that's really good.
And then also, actually, throughout this tournament and the current one, I lose the lead quite a bit, and I'm still able to fight my way back. So I think.
Well, that's because you're a really good trainer. When I lose the lead, I'm just like,
I think that's also where the team comp comes in as well. And when you can give yourself a fighting chance with something like Gallade. So if you can make a Gallade, I would strongly recommend that you bring it because it's difficult to play with, but it's also very, very difficult to play against as well. And so that does kind of destabilize your opponents and definitely gives them more to consider when they're bringing in their line of 3.
That is true. Gallade is on my other team as well.
And both are viable, the shadow version and the normal version.
Yeah, you can.
You don't, if you didn't TM away a frustration during the rocket events, you still have that possibility of bringing a normal Gallade as well.
Yeah, there are some matches where it just having the little extra shadow damage will, like against the Medicham. I've played against a couple of Gallades with my Medicham on a different team, and I was like, oh, this isn't bad at all.
Yeah, and against Wigglytuff, I know it's a very specific situation. I have managed to knock out a Wigglytuff with 1 hit, close combat with the Shadow Gallade. You do need 2 confusions, I think. So it's a bit of a stretch, but it does work out because if you have the normal Gallade, you don't get that extra damage that you need. I do look at Gallade as a Shadow Gallade as an upgrade, but it's still completely manageable with a normal Gallade as well.
I completely agree. Yeah. Well, good luck to you in the rest of your tournaments.
Thank you very much.
For everyone watching, thank you for watching the video. And if you like this type of content, let us know. Give us a like or maybe even a subscription. And we will catch you guys in the next one. See you.